Hello, my name is Cornelius Minor, and I'm a literacy coach in Brooklyn, New York. I am excited to share this blog post with you. Now, in my job as a coach, I support teachers both here in Brooklyn and all over the world. And so I wanted to make my blog post actually a little bit of me. So this is what I do every day. Welcome to my office. And if you were a teacher that I worked with, or a parent or a kid, one of the things that I do is I engage communities in study on various topics each week. And this week at my school, we've really been wrapping things up. So I'm in District 15 in Brooklyn, and we've really been looking at the work that we've been doing in, middle school and elementary school and high school classrooms all over. And we're really trying to tie a neat little bow on that to end the year. And so what better way to end the year than to end it not just with my colleagues here in New York City, but with all of you. Now, each time I do this, and I do this each week. So again, if you were a teacher that I worked with, you would be getting this video every Friday. And in each Friday's video, I summarize the work that we've done this week, and I kind of think with them about where we're going for next week. And so again, welcome to our Friday. Now, this week, again, we've really been looking at the year and thinking all about what we've learned and how we can move forward. One of the things that I do at the top of each video is I name the texts that have influenced my thinking. So as we wrap up this year and as we think about how we might move forward, here are some texts that I'm considering. Now, I'm borrowing a lot of our work today from the work of Miles Horton. This is his autobiography. For those of you who don't know, Miles Horton was a brilliant educator. And one of the big themes that we've been studying this week is how do we become politically courageous in our classrooms, in our homes, and in our community spaces. And so we've really been thinking lots about political courage, specifically around the question, especially at this time of the school year, why don't things change? We work so hard throughout the year sometimes, and things don't always change as we wanted them to. And so we're really going to be studying that, and I've used a lot of Miles Horton's work to frame that. Another text that influenced my work today, oddly, we've been talking about political courage, and I was hanging out with some first graders this week, and the first graders were in this powerful way learning all about courage from this book. And so Tracy West's work, now it's fantastic, it's about dragons, but I walked into a conversation of 6- and 7-year-olds who understood courage in terms and in ways that I haven't seen some of our adult colleagues understand it. And so, and when I asked them, where'd you get it from? This was the book they cited. So of course I ran home and I read it. And so I'll be bringing in lots of dragon stuff as we define courage in this blog post. Finally, I've been thinking lots about moving forward and how we move through difficult things. No Ashes in the Fire has definitely influenced my thinking for this blog post. And then several other kid books that have really helped to frame my thinking this week. The Moon Within is a powerful, powerful book. Lots of young folks can't stop talking about it. I can't stop thinking about it. And so a lot of what appears in this book makes its way into my thinking and into my coaching. And this book, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out Hurricane Child, an amazing, amazing text. Again, when I think about what it means in our academic spaces, what it means in our home spaces, what it means in our professional spaces, what it means in our community spaces to be powerful and to do powerful work for and with young people, that book really helps a lot. And then, of course, I want to ground all of this in incredible pedagogy. I've been leaning on a lot of Alfred Tatum this week. And so one of the big things that I wanted to talk about, both in this blog post, and I hope that you'll begin to discuss in your work, is, again, I've really been asking the question, when we do so much heartfelt and powerful work, why don't things change? And the teachers and I this week have really kind of boiled that down into 3 things. We really wanted to look at some of the mindset work that we've been doing across the year. We've wanted to take a look at what structural adjustments we've been making that matches our academic and our intellectual work. And then, of course, we wanted to think a lot about continued revision, that our work as educators, our work as community activists is never done. It is a constant act and art of reinvention. And so I wanted to talk about those 3 things as we work. Now, one of the things that has come up for for us. And I'm sure this is a challenge as you think about your own work, is we've learned so much this year. Again, I'm a literacy guy, so we've done so much like word study and language acquisition. We've looked at how we construct sentences and paragraphs in really powerful ways for kids. And we've learned how really like kids weave those things together to tell really brilliant narratives, or to really argue powerful things in their essays, or explain things in their information writing. And as we weave all of these things together, also ideas around like what it means to be an equitable teacher have come up. And so how do we take what we know about emotional intelligence, and take what we know about diverse and inclusive books, and take what we know about literacy, and like bring all of that together. And so one of the things and I guess the question that drives this blog post is, how do I integrate all of this stuff? And then once I know all of this stuff, what do I do first? And so that's been a huge driving question for us. And then as I do all of these new things, and we have done all of these new things this year, how do we consistently ensure quality as we continue to learn and to move forward? So one of the things that I wanted to start with is that anytime we're doing this work, one of the first things that we can do is we can prioritize student learning. That as we study emotional intelligence, as we study equity, as we study all of these literacy techniques, one of the things that we have really sought to get our arms around is, how do we prioritize student learning? And we've done that by asking a question. And this question has been the framing question of our work this week. And I'm sure this question will define our next few weeks as we close out the school year. And the question is this: when kids aren't learning, what's in the way? And when communities aren't moving, what's in the way? Now, here's the thing about school culture. School culture is deeply intertwined with blame culture, that when kids aren't moving and communities aren't moving, we tend to blame the communities, or we tend to blame the kids. And so a big part of our work this week was just like, when we look at the things that aren't moving, what are the structural things that might be in the way? And so we've sought to, again, redefine our work by stepping out of the blame game and stepping into structural analysis. So asking ourselves again, what is in the way? And sometimes those things can be scheduling. Sometimes that can be how we do school, how we engage kids, how we marshal resources. And so as we work, to provide more equitable literacy for kids. This week, several things came up as we sought to prioritize student learning by analyzing our own practice and asking what's in the way. One of the first big things that came up is, when we think about powerful literacy, really when we think about powerful anything, math, science, social studies, and when we're looking at equity and emotional intelligence and all of those things, one of the things that we realize is that sometimes powerful equity work in this regard is pedagogy. We've really had to learn that sometimes the thing that's in the way is us, the way that we approach our materials, the way that we approach kids. And so one big question that we worked on this week, and that I'm imploring you to work on as you close out your school year and lean into your summer, is really taking a look at what are the practices and the customs and the rules that govern your classroom that might need to shift this week, this summer, this semester, this career, and what can that shift look like? And so we've been engaged this week in powerful imagination work. One of the things that I've continued to draw on is this idea that without powerful imagination, there is no progress in anything. We are no good to any movement if we cannot imagine tomorrows that are radically better than our todays. And so in our learning this week, we've really discovered that powerful equity work is in our pedagogy. Another thing that we've discovered is that powerful equity work is structural. As we've studied this week, and again, we've really been seeking to think about and summarize the year that we've had together. And as we've studied this week, one of the things that we've seen is that, again, powerful work is structural. It's really looking at the things that we do every day and looking at the outcomes that students produce and asking ourselves, how can we redefine those things and step out of the way? One big thing that we learned this week in chemistry specifically, and this I think is a brilliant example, even if you don't teach chemistry in Brooklyn, we did some experiments this week in and out of classrooms. And in order to do our experiments, we had to move chemistry to earlier in the day. And when we moved chemistry to earlier in the day, we discovered that the students did so well when science was early in the day. And so as we looked at our outcomes throughout this year, there were times of the year where kids weren't doing well in science because science was late in the day. And so we asked ourselves the inquiry question this week, what would happen if we shifted science to earlier in the day a few times a week? Would we see an increase in kids' performance? And this week we tried that 3 times. And each time science was held earlier in the day, the kids' level of engagement was up, the kids' productivity was up, their general affect was up. And so one of the things that we discovered in chemistry this week is that the thing that was in the way of the student learning was our own structural design, that when offered earlier in the day, the kids tended to do better. Now that's a tough thing to think about, because then now moving forward and into next year, we've got to think, how are we setting up schedules to give kids access to science earlier in the day so that they do better? And again, so this week we've learned that powerful equity work is structural, and that we are actively engaged in some structural redesign right now to give kids bigger and better access to the things that they need. Again, stepping out of the blame game. And so it's really easy to say, oh, the kids aren't performing in chemistry, but it's really hard to look at ourselves and say, well, how have we established the practice of doing chemistry here in this school in order to prohibit kids from accessing all that they can access? And then another thing that we've discovered is that our powerful work, sometimes equity work is around resources. And I know that's an easy thing to say because, there's lots of money and books and all that we think about. But one of the things that we really grappled with this week was the resource of time, that we discovered that time is an incredible resource. And we've been asking ourselves the question, what would it look like? What can it look like to invest our time in the things that matter most for students? And so this week we did some time audits. We spent time together in our professional learning groups really thinking about how do we spend our time and how can we begin to streamline those things. And we wanted to make sure that the time investments that we're making have the most direct impact on kids. And one of the things that we discovered in that regard is that our time spent responding to students in ways that they can hear us was one of our most important investments. And so we did a little bit of less notebook grading this week, and we did a lot more conferring in small groups this week. And we measured, and we found that had a much bigger impact. And so when giving kids feedback, in order to create, again, a more equitable school and community ecosystem, we realized that our time needed to be spent responding to students, and not in the traditional ways of I'm sitting in my office grading papers, but in very powerful and interpersonal ways. I'm sitting next to a kid, talking to them about how their work can go and what's up next for them. And one of the things that was really cool to discover is that by investing kids in this way, it also helped with many of the relationships that we've been struggling with this spring. And so kids self-reported that they were way happier at school when we were with them at their tables, at their desk, giving them everyday feedback. And so we discovered that in addition to equity work being pedagogy, in addition to equity work being structural, equity work was how we invest our resources, and specifically in our context, and more than likely in your context, one of our most valuable resources being time, and how are we putting that time directly into students and not into all of the things that tend to get in the way of our work with students. Finally, one of the things that we discovered is that sometimes equity work is disruptive. And it's a thing that I've thought a lot about and I've written a lot about, and it's been really, really powerful to practice all of those things with you this week. And we've really been, again, looking at the practices that don't serve students powerfully and changing those, and not forming 15 committees and 32 agendas and 20 meetings to change those things. But how do we really analyze the things that aren't working for kids, look at the outcomes, change the thing immediately, and measure outcomes again? That has been huge for us this week, and I'm sure it'll be huge for many of you out there. And so again, this week as we wrap up our study and kind of prepare ourselves for next week's study, some big things that I wanted to leave you with. Again, the idea that sometimes equity work is embedded in our pedagogy, sometimes it's embedded in our structural design or redesign of the things that govern our classrooms, our schools, our departments, and our communities. Sometimes that work is about our resources, and we've discovered that, here, we don't have tons and tons of money, but one of the resources that we do have a lot of power over is the resource of time, and how are we investing that time directly in kids. Also, we thought lots about how we actively work to disrupt the practices that are not immediately serving students. So thank you for all of your work this week. Those of you who are joining me for this week's or for today's 31 days blog post, thank you for joining me in my office hours. I am really looking forward to all of your ideas, all of your feedback. Keep doing your thing. Those of you who are out early or getting out soon, a lot of us in New York City are jealous. Again, we're not out until late June, but we've got more time to study, more time to think. Again, thank you for all of the incredible work that you're doing. Looking forward to hearing from many of you. Have a wonderful long weekend. Take care.